5 sales professionals get together and talk everything sales. This week, we're focusing on a topic that everyone has been talking about for probably the past at least 2, if not more, years: technology and AI. Tech plays a role in every aspect of our lives these days, and if harnessed correctly, can make us even better salesmen. So, to get us started, I'm going to pose this first question. How are some ways that you all stay authentic in a digital world? And I'm going to throw it over to Grant because he has talked a little bit about this in some past episodes, and he has really taken that to heart on his LinkedIn page. So, Grant, how are some ways that you stay authentic in the digital world?
Yeah, thanks, Abby. Great question. I think, honestly, the thing that I think a lot of folks overcomplicate is they feel like if I'm going to put myself out there, I have to put on some type of performance, put on a facade, right? Of like, hey, this is who I think people want to see. And like that just like, no, goes totally against what authenticity is at its foundation. Like, I think really what the opportunity here is that technology allows you to be in front of people very often because everybody's looking at their phones, they're checking email, reading, social media posts, right? So there's this captive audience that you have and you can build some rapport and a relationship with kind of in a passive manner. So like, just be yourself. Don't feel like you need to, go outside of who you are, be who you would be if you were in front of somebody face to face, shaking hands. Use it as something that can be to your advantage, and really just don't overcomplicate it. That's what I'd have to say.
Yeah, you made a comment about people kind of well, what I heard, I'm not sure if this is how you said it, but about what I heard in my mind was, people acting like salespeople. The people are trying to almost like imitate or mimic what they think a salesperson is supposed to sound like, instead of being authentic. And you're right, like that does not land well. Where authenticity, even if it's rough around the edges, and I don't know, I think that's what people really crave. Is those authentic connections and authentic conversations.
And I think, I've put myself out there in the past and do the talking head videos and just kind of go out on a limb, but just like be yourself. And I think people, and I've felt this, you get so caught up in like, hey, I want it to look perfect, sound perfect. We got to have the lighting. We got to have the background. We got to make sure we got the props in place. Like, but that's just not real life. That's not realistic. I think if you can just come off as, hey, to your point, Eric, like maybe it's not 100% polished. I'm human. We're all human. Let's just have conversations. Let's help solve problems. That's what people like really enjoy. And I think it's interesting. I watched quite a bit of YouTube content creators, and I've even seen a lot of folks are starting to shift their strategy a little bit, where they are doing more just kind of the off the cuff, like let's just talk to the camera and vlog. Like I don't need to have the perfect studio setup, because again, I think your consumers have over time been so like almost become numb of everything is perfect, everything is polished. And again, that's just not reality. And folks realize that, right? So then all of a sudden when you do interact with somebody who's more authentic, more realistic, more real world, it just really resonates with people.
My wife and I were just talking about this, right? What people do you like the most? The people that are comfortable with themselves. But in the same token, I'm gonna throw my wife under the bus. She won't listen to this. She doesn't like listen to me. So like when she meets somebody, I'm like, who's this person? Where did that high voice come from? And same thing with the sales reps. We get into a meeting and all of a sudden we're pitching, and all of a sudden like, who are you? Where did that come from? It's like, what voice is that? Because we're trying to be something we're not, but people just like authenticity. And I struggled with that early too. We talked about it in the last podcast. I wanted to be that machismo sales guy that had we're hunting, we're getting we're getting after it and all these different things. And it just wasn't authentic. It wasn't me. I was trying to be something different. And in this world though, with all the automation, all the scaling, all the math, right? Like, I think that's the one thing that's going to shift now finally, is we can start being more creative. And that's what makes us different, because everybody's using this technology and it's getting watered down. and everybody's going to sound the same. I'm calling friends out like, nice AI post, bro. Like, I know you did that. Like, I don't know you well enough to call you out, but there's a lot of guys I know that are just use AI to get ideas maybe, but don't have it write everything for you, because you can tell, you can see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right on, Neil. Technology, AI, computers, however you want to sort of think about it, they kind of lack authenticity by design, right? They're programmed. So, I mean, if we're going to send an email blast out, there's nothing really authentic about it. There's nothing unique about it. I mean, you can personalize it, in some ways, but it still comes across as kind of just a mass email. I think that's one of the big differences with humans, and one of the things that in that human to human piece that is so important, and authenticity is a huge key there.
I think there's a difference between like marketing. Like I love AI. I use it all the time for a ton of different, and there's a difference between marketing and then actually
True.
some of the stuff that you're posting that you want to be more brand and authentic. I will tell you guys that I feel like this is the next mountain that I need to figure out how to climb, and I am at the bottom of it. I it's just a totally new world that we're living in, where this is a big part of what we need to do is approach things in this digital space. And I just want to call people or sit down with them face to face. The idea that I've got to build this big online brand and I've got to kind of change our approach. And we're starting a TikTok channel for Brightspeed now. I'm so far out of my element right now that did you guys have MySpace? I had MySpace. Like that's where my digital social media journey started. And so I feel like I'm just barely past graduating on that. And I feel extremely uncomfortable and out of my element. And I'm a disciplined person, extremely disciplined. I decide I'm going to do something. But in this, I have start stopped like 400 times because I don't even know. I don't even know how to shape it and what to do and where to begin. And it's kind of overwhelming. Now AI as a tool to build out my resources, I got you. But the discipline that comes along building like a real digital brand and being authentically out there all the time, which is kind of part of what we need to do as we become sales leaders in our organization. That becomes part of your responsibility as a sales leader, is to engage with people on all of the different platforms and to build awareness around who you are and what you are. It's tough though.
I'm pretty sure in the TikTok user license agreement that you're forbidden to have a TikTok account if you had a MySpace account. I'm pretty sure that's in there.
I knew you were going to bring that up. No, I think it maybe should be. Am I the only one that had? I can't be the. You probably had one.
I honestly don't remember if I had one. I mean, I was definitely I don't recall.
Doesn't want to admit it.
So going back to your sort of building that online brand. I've really had to force myself in the last probably year and a half to really be active on LinkedIn, as a way of kind of promoting our program at North Dakota State, promoting our students, and I do think, during the semester when I do that sales minute post every week, I have to just force myself to hit the post button because I do not like posting a video of me talking on. And of course, we're making a video right now of us talking. But so I've had to get used to that. But it's honestly kind of become fun. I mean, when I started, it was very. I really did have to force myself, and I still do a little bit, but I kind of enjoy it a little bit more now than when I first started. You just have to have really good, sort of consistent effort is I think a pretty key piece of that.
One thing that this reminds me of that I just actually saw on social media, which it was for social media, but I think it totally applies to this too, of like there was this like grid or this chart and it went like up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And it was showing like your life. So your life is, you're going to have moments where you're really high, you're low, high, low, high, low, and it's going to just swing back and forth. And then it had stars on the top points. And on the top points, it was like, the stars are what is on social media. And then the graph is your life. So I think one thing that you could try to, or that sales professionals could try to implement, is showing those low points, showing the points that aren't just all high, because that's going to build so much trust with your customer base of, you know what, this week sucked. It did not go well. I had bad meetings. And this is part of life, because every sales professional goes through that. Every person goes through that. You have bad weeks. And so showing that instead of just showing the high points could actually work to your benefit.
Oh, absolutely. So Abby,
my question.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, you
Go
go.
for it, Neil. No, no, it's all you.
I was the question I'm asking because I have, my sales reps that don't have a good personal brand and haven't been really using social media. Do you need to have that in this digital age now? Is that necessary to be successful? As I'm posing to the group right here.
I think it would kind of depend on what your strategy is, right? You know, I think social media, if you're doing it right, it's not about, connecting with somebody and, messaging them some sales pitch about who you are, what you're selling. It's about putting that content out and over time some natural connections, and it's a slow play. People
Right.
are going to connect with you. Suddenly they become interested. Months later they reach out. They want to grab coffee and talk. And now all of a sudden something has, moved forward, but it took 3 or 4 months or longer to make it happen. That's pretty different than doing outbound, SDR work where I'm just hitting the phones, making phone calls where I'm literally trying to, make something happen today and set up a meeting or whatever that goal is. So I mean, I think it really depends on the strategy of that person and or that team or company.
I think personally, so I've done some social media work with my new or my current job, and it kind of depends on what your goal is. I think that doing work and marketing on social media can work to your benefit. We've had customers come in to pick up their trucks who are like, "Oh, hey, it's Abby from social media," and they totally recognize me, and that's great. Like if I'm going to make this my career for 30 years and I love it, like I have brand recognition already. They already know who I am in my first 6 months. Um, so if that's kind of like your goal, and I also think that it can show, like it kind of builds that first meeting out already. Like they already kind of know you. So you can really play to getting to know them more because they already feel it's like meeting a celebrity. Like you don't want to talk about them, like you want to talk about yourself because you already feel like you know them. And so if you can get the customers to already feel like they kind of know you going into a first meeting, that really could play to your benefit because you could
Mhm.
really just try and get to know them.
I would just say obviously we're investing in it, and I think it's about differentiated outreach. It's a tool, and every tool that you use increases your potential impact. The challenge is like managing the time. I think, and I'm sitting here saying I'm doing a terrible job of it, and it's something that I'm working on improving on. Maybe my New Year's resolution, you guys can help hold me accountable. But I often feel too like I need to be really good at this before I start. Which it's funny because I'm talking to all my salespeople. I'm like, you're not going to be that good at first. Just go. But then here I am going. I'm going. Oh, I'm not very ready to start this. So I'm not good yet. So I haven't started. Or I'll stop 1,000 times because I'm. So I think some of it, even the 1 minute post that you're doing, Eric, that's perfect. It's 1 minute. And so I think that trying to embrace like the shorter posts and just being more consistent and not thinking I need to come up with something brilliant every single time. Have you guys watched TikTok? I can't believe the stuff that's on there. So I could probably get away with imperfection there really easy and maybe be famous for it. So maybe next time we're talking, I'll be like the TikTok famous thing. You never saw me coming just as soon as I figure out how to create a post. And
So I have a question to throw at each of us. What is, and this is either AI or social, selling, whatever direction you want to take it. Where's a good use, and where's a bad use, or sort of a bad example, right? What's a great way to use AI in sales, and where shouldn't we use AI in sales? Where might it actually have a detrimental impact? And I have some thoughts, but I'll let one of you guys go first.
I'll go first, and of course I'm going to have to plug the Microsoft technology.
Yeah.
But I love using Microsoft AI, right? Microsoft 365 Copilot for Teams meeting transcription and recap, right? So my job, I mean, I sit at a computer like this all day. All I do really is video meetings, video calls, and historically we've taken notes on a notepad. You're trying to type, you're trying to talk at the same time. Really, I would say even before the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of video calls. I mean, you'd phone people, right? But you were never having to put on like the nonverbal communication that you give, even as we sit here right now. So now all of a sudden, as you're in a digital world where you actually see people, though, you're trying to work on your nonverbal communication, things like that. So, I mean, a game changer for me has been, leveraging those types of solutions for, again, meeting transcription, meeting recap. So then, as long as I know that I ask good questions, I try to obviously like have structure to my conversations, somehow try to close conversations, then I always have the notes that I need at the end. And I can always go back, hey, what did I ask? What did they say about this? So for me, that's a great use case. Now,
Mhm.
the poor use cases, right, are when AI is used in, a non-personal, just blanket, hey, we're going to do blast outreach. I'm going to try to pitch things to people that is obviously not me. I mean, that's just a pretty easy no.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm getting stuff is like this layered outreach. Like, hey, you can buy this solution and AI will follow up and start the conversation for you. I, those tools are incredible. Don't get me wrong, but I find it a little offensive. Like, I don't want to talk to a robot. To me, I don't appreciate that type of inauthentic outreach, where it's clearly not a real human that's reaching out and they're layering on conversations. Um, to me, you're kind of taking away all of what makes sales great. So
Yeah.
I don't appreciate that at all. Um, I
You know,
honestly go ahead.
that's such a, an interesting topic, because I'm in complete agreement with you. And we have a pretty good example of decades of, what I'll say, phone tree hell of trying to call into a company, your insurance company, your credit card company, whoever you're trying to call, and whatever you do, you can't find a way to talk to an actual person, and all you do is get mad, right?
Mhm.
And I think, that, no, I have dialed the number and had good experiences with some of those automated attendants too. So I think some of that comes down to design, but I think, to your point and to what Grant said, I mean, I think if you're using AI to get in the way of sort of human to human conversation, connection, relationship building, then you have taken it three steps too far.
I think it will absolutely ruin the sales profession if people embrace that. It takes away all the authenticity, all of the real connection. And now on the flip side, the things that I would say that I love, I absolutely like content creation. Now you have to add your own authenticity to it, but job descriptions, resumes, cover letters, content creation, PowerPoint. I don't even really appreciate PowerPoints very much because I think sometimes people speak to their slide decks and not to their audience, but it is a good conversation guide. You can share a lot of valuable content in a good PowerPoint. Um, Creating a with Copilot is incredible. You can put all the right resources in, it'll help you with graphics. It is an amazing, amazing resource. And actually, they've made a lot of leaps and bounds around Excel. And once that becomes what I know it will be with Excel, oh my gosh, I can't wait to not have to like reach out to my accounting team every time I want a spreadsheet adjusted or something because it's a whole nother language there. But there are some amazing tools out there leveraging AI that will make our lives a million times easier
Yeah.
as long
Well,
as we stay.
another example of how AI can be used in sales. If you were trying to sell, into any kind of publicly traded company, for example, right? If you were trying to work a deal there and you wanted to get some inside information as to priorities in that company, you have one option. You could, go out and, do an internet search, find their latest 10Q filing and all their other SEC filings, and spend the next 6 hours reading them all. Or you literally could, go into Copilot or ChatGPT, and you could literally, just ask it to summarize, company priorities and, latest SEC filings. And, 5 seconds later, you have, a page worth of information that, might give you the answer you're looking for. So, I mean, that's another example, I think, of just, simple ways we can just use it to become wildly more efficient with that, but that doesn't get in the way of, sort of that human to human piece.
I 100% agree. And I think to go in knowing something to a meeting like that is brilliant. But one thing I would caution people is don't walk in and sit down with your customer and act like you know something. Ask what you think you know.
Yes.
So when you're sitting across from somebody, do your research because that's brilliant. But then ask what you think you know. Don't say I know this because you don't know anything. You don't know anything until they tell you what you know. But that's one of the things I bet you guys about. You're all shaking because you've been a part of those conversations where a rep goes in and goes, you know, your priorities are this. No, you don't know what people's priorities are until they tell you. But having that background and to have a knowledgeable conversation is invaluable.
As you guys keep talking about the time saving, that's what it's for me, right? It can save so much time, but then make sure then you go execute on that time. I think that's the suck that we get into, right? Just like social media or chat GBT, you can get in a scroll fest and you can start asking all these questions. And now all of a sudden you're off the grid and you're like, where did this go? Because it's so amazing, right? And you said, yeah, this is saving me so much time. You just spent 3 hours scrolling social and chat GBTing and not doing the thing that you set forth to do that day. That's where you have to be so careful of like, hey, I'm going to use social media, not get used by social media. I'm going to be the news. I'm going to be the attention, not looking at the attention. Same thing with chat GPT. I'm using it, or Copilot, I'm using it because I'm trying to get information to get into this place. And once I get it, then I'm going to use it and go, like, do. That's still the most important thing. And as we talk about, is it important to have a personal brand? Can you win without it? Of course, tons of people are. But it doesn't hurt. Like I've got my fanny pack or a grappling belt if you want to be more manly, like whatever you want to use, or like, you know, like I'll say fanny pack or maybe a crossbody bag. Like I want all the things in there. I want all the things using to get the best possible way of winning deals or getting to know people or earning trust. So I think that's the biggest thing. And can we use it and not get used by it? Because I know I do sometimes. I have full attention to post something, and then I'm like, well, that's a fun post. That's cool. And I'm like, gone.
I have a funny example connecting that with something Grant said just a few minutes ago. So this is probably about a month ago. I had sat on this call, and a whole bunch of information was provided, right? And then after the call, one of the people on the call sent a transcript from Microsoft Teams of the notes and sort of, tasks and stuff that were committed. And then about 5 minutes later, somebody else on the call sent an AI generated list from a different platform, Otter or something like that. Wasn't super familiar with it. So then I got curious and spent the next hour like comparing the two. And I'm like, boy, this didn't save me any time.
I know it is an adjustment. My manager uses that Otter AI to record our meetings, and the first time he did it, I was like, "Why is the meeting recording? What's that thing? Who's in the call?" Well, and it took like 5 minutes for him to explain it to us, and then I was like, "Well, that defeated the whole purpose of him taking notes."
All right, Abby, did you have anything to add on where you use AI today at all?
Well, kind of just to echo what you guys were saying. So to take notes in meetings, especially like one-on-ones, catch-ups, quick customer calls, like all those things it's great to get those notes so you don't have to do them yourself and just check them. I use it a lot to help develop social media posts, just ideas for social media posts. It can get, like Neil said, you can get kind of caught in the rabbit hole. I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do some research on Facebook, and I'll go look at our competitors. And then all of a sudden I'm like years deep in their posts and I'm not really gaining anything. And so AI gives me some quick answers to help just generate some ideas and get a post out. I do struggle with it when I try and send out, like actually today I was using it to help draft like a Christmas email to my clients of just Merry Christmas. And I send a Christmas email, whatever. And I did back and forth a few times and I was like, okay, well, this is good for ideas, but I don't like anything that you're spitting back at me because it doesn't sound like me and it's way too scripted. And so keeping that authenticity is important whenever you're contacting a client for sure.
All right, Abby, did you have a question for us?
We talked about this a little bit. Social media having a place in modern sales and what that place is. Does anyone have anything else to add on maybe even outside of LinkedIn? Not just because LinkedIn is, the professional social media, but is there any other platforms that do have a place in sales or will as time goes on?
Probably depends on what you sell. I mean, some of us are going on TikTok.
Maybe. Hey, TikTok like integrates into all these other social media platforms, as I understand. I've heard.
Deep down, I'm just
Anna,
jealous.
we'll have to do a call. I can help you with that.
Good, please do.
You, you,
Honestly, I've heard
oh,
multiple times that Facebook is king on the marketing space from a lot of people that Facebook is king. We cross promote our stuff on LinkedIn and Facebook for our organization. As a direct seller, and I did that for a very, very long time. I have a lot of friends on Facebook that were customers, and honestly, they got to know me better and I got to know them better. Now, everybody's got a different style. That is 100% on you. And I would never have blind sent a Facebook request to somebody I just met. But as I got to know people and became friends with a lot of the people that were clients, and I still am, I'm so grateful for those personal relationships I've developed more so than probably anything else. Now, some of the people that I work with would be like, I would never be friends with people like that, and they keep their social media very private. I, I'm not that cool, and I didn't have anything that exciting to hide. So if somebody wants to share pictures of their kids, and that's pretty much what I'm doing, or I get to go on a trip once in a while. It's fun to get to know somebody on a different level like that. So Facebook, actually, I have quite a few customers on there, probably more than I do family and friends. And it helped me understand the people that I was working with a lot on a completely different level. So, not for everybody, but it was and is for me. So,
that brings up an interesting point. I mean, everybody has to kind of come up with their own somewhat personal strategy as to how they're going to use social media and kind of what for, right? For me, I post a ton of stuff on LinkedIn and it's all related to sales. In some form or fashion, that's the common thread that pretty much weaves between everything I do on LinkedIn. Facebook to me is much more personal. It's if you go look at what I post on Facebook, it's vacations, it's hunting trips, it's fishing trips, it's family. I don't have a problem with business stuff being on LinkedIn. It's just I use one that is about my personal life and one that's kind of about my professional life. And I don't have enough time in a day to do another social media platform. So those are the two that I go with. Which is, I mean, true though. I mean, how can a person be on all of them? I mean, the amount of time that would take.
there's an
Uh,
app for that.
yeah, that's true.
And
That's true.
I think it comes
That's
back
what
to like,
assistants are for.
right? And we all have the same amount of time. It's just what's your priority
Yeah.
is what I would pose, right? Like, and if it's a priority to be on all seven and that's what you want and that's what your highest priority is, you'll find a way, just like anything. It just depends, is that juice worth the squeeze? And a lot of times it's not. But if I could, wouldn't that be great? If you could just, right, like if there was an app for that, wouldn't it be great to have attention everywhere if it would work? Like, because it's just attention. And you don't know where it's going to all of a sudden get that attention or get that right person. And yes, TikTok, because guess who makes a lot of buying decisions in my house? My daughter. She's not on TikTok, so I don't let her, but that's who's seeing it, but that's who's making a lot of buying decisions, depending on what you're selling. And if you got on TikTok early, that could be where you were the first one there. And now you have a huge following, right? Because you did it. And when something new comes out, that's what we have to, which I want to do is like, okay, get into this right away. But I missed the wave, right? Like you missed the wave a lot of times. And it just
It's
isn't.
okay. We'll wait for the next social media platform, Neil. You and I'll jump on it right
Yeah,
away.
well, that next one though, me and you will jump it. We'll get on that one. We'll get on it at that point. But that's hard because, like you said, it's not a priority for me right now, and that's where people have to start. They all say, you know what, I'm going to get on all seven. I'm going to go on Instagram. I'm going to go on TikTok. I'm going to go on this, and this. How about we start with one, right? Do the one that you think you fits the best for you right now. Start there and get really good at it, and then you're gonna like it's not so scary. And then if you want to keep bolting on after that, then we can keep adding on to that. But just like when you want to start anything, I think we make it so overwhelming that you have to do all these things. Just start with one that you
Well,
think will work the best.
and something you said there triggered a thought about what Anna had said a few minutes ago about kind of building a brand. And I think one of the interesting things on LinkedIn is you're building your brand, but you're also building your company's brand, right?
Right.
It's not one or the other. I mean, LinkedIn is about you, And, yeah, I post a bunch of stuff about North Dakota State and students at North Dakota State, but it's also about, my brand. And if 10 years from now I didn't work at North Dakota State, my brand continues. So, I mean, LinkedIn's kind of got this really neat, how it blends together sort of your work life, but also your personal career. And, from a networking perspective, I find to be kind of this fascinating environment. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm not sure I said anything all that knowledgeable there, but it's fascinating to me and I enjoy it.
I think something else that, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and Eric, I mean, I know I've came and, talked to students about it before.
Mhm.
I think it's again, like, it all comes down to what's your strategy? What are you passionate about and can commit to? Because it is tough. There is consistency that has to take place, right? You are going to probably step out of your comfort zone and maybe do something that naturally you might not enjoy as much. So it's again like, what's the strategy? What are you interested in and can commit to? And then I think lastly, figuring out like, what is the ROI you're looking for? And for me, my thought has always been, I'm trying to build some type of an audience, right? So whether it's people I'm selling to, whether it's trying to just grow my overall network for, current opportunities, future opportunities, really at the end of the day, you're trying to build some type of audience, right? That's learning who you are, building that rapport, building the connection. And then I think this is like a great kind of story to tell is I don't know if anybody's familiar with the YouTube creator called Mr. Beast. He's like the most popular YouTube creator in the world. He's got, I don't know, over 300 million subscribers or something. And he just, started off by kind of making silly videos, right? Where he'd go and, I don't know, buy everything in a grocery store, right? And then he would donate it, a lot of cool things. But then what did he eventually do? He created a chocolate company and now he sells candy bars, right? So it's this thing of like, well, he's obviously on like this whole nother level of just understanding like, really, what is this? It's a way to create influence, interact with people that are going to potentially buy. You talk about TikTok. I'm not personally on TikTok, but man, who is mainly on TikTok? It's like the younger generations, the new business leaders, the people that are very, very connected to technology. That's how they're going to buy. That's how they're going to be influenced, right? So I think, like Anna, you felt like, man, there's a lot of pressure. I feel like I need to do this. Like, hey, if you think that there could be a strategy and you think there's some ROI, I would definitely encourage you to do it. But I don't want people to feel pressured that they have to do something. If it's like, man, I just don't like this. I don't know if like, because then if you don't like it, you don't think you can commit to it, then it doesn't have to be your strategy. And that's okay, right? Because there's so many other things you could do. And there's probably other people in your organization that maybe would fit kind of the mold of, hey, you know what? That person's going to be the kind of content guru. They're the ones that are going to try to grow the brand, right? So I think again, that's the beauty of this is like, again, everybody can have their own strategy. We can all do their own thing. But I do believe that this is a huge opportunity. And Neil, like you said, people that are early adopters, at least if they can commit to it for an extended period of time, are proven to have a lot of reach.
Well, I have good news for everyone here. So, TikTok might get banned soon by the US government, but there'll be something new. So, Eric and Neil need to get on that right now.
Yeah.
Make sure you're watching for whatever comes out.
MySpace is making a comeback.
Yeah.
I'm totally in. Oh.
Some of us might already have accounts.
Yeah, Anna's already ahead of the game. She's ready to go.
Hey, I have one more question to kind of throw at us. When we think about AI, and obviously it's going to keep changing at a really fast pace, and in all kinds of new creative uses that we probably can't even think of right now. What do we think are some of the critical skills for us, right? For me, for our listeners, for you guys, what are the critical skills in that AI world? What do What's the salesperson that just got a job out of college? What are the skills they need to really perfect to be super successful in that AI world where AI is going to be doing some of that?
I would go in. I think if you, especially when you're new and you're learning how to communicate it in another in another way, and in another, you might be in a new vertical talking about different solutions where you're still learning how to propose things. I think AI can be a great tool to help you compose your messaging. However, like Abby said, you have to make sure that it sounds like you. My team kind of makes fun of me because we'll talk about like putting together an email, and I'll be like helping them write something, and they always tell me I sound like a girl. So rude. And they don't want to put smiley faces in their emails like I do. So I make it your own. It's very, very important that you sound like you, but having somebody to help you kind of spitball. I mean, you may not have used some of those Merry Christmas messages, Abby, but it maybe gave you some ideas about what you want to say. And sometimes just knowing what you don't want to say helps you figure out what you do want to say.
Oh yeah.
So I think just having that person to help you come up with ideas when you're trying to put together messaging is really, really helpful.
What other
I think
skills are necessary, Abby?
I was just gonna say I don't think honestly much has changed. I think you still like AI is this new product and this new, tool for you to use, but you still have to know how to manage your time. Like Neil said, you can get stuck in the rabbit hole. You still have to know how to sound like yourself, how to be authentic. That's never changed. You need to know how to communicate. You need to know how to you just because you have AI that can do all this, you still have to know how to pick up the phone and call a client and talk to them. Have to know how to host a meeting. I think that, and then most of all, which maybe this is the change, I guess, is like know how to work it. But honestly, like coming into a new job, you have to learn how to work, your CRM system, your email. You have to manage, you know, maybe Microsoft tools, like whatever it is. So I honestly don't think much has changed. It's just you're just learning a new tool to manage and continuing to practice time management and, communication and all of those good things. And just realizing that your job hasn't changed. You just have new ways to make you better at it.
I think that's super insightful. I mean, you can look back over, hundreds of years, right? The telephone, the fax machine, the internet, and how that impacted sales. I mean, there's been tons of massive technological advancements over time that have impacted how we sell, but it still boils down to building trust, building a relationship, being able to understand the other person's needs and their emotions and feelings, bringing that emotional intelligence, which that might be one of those skills that's really important with AI, is really focusing in on being able to, understand sort of those emotions and feelings. But you're right. I don't think the fundamental skills of sales are going to change that much with AI.
I think that's why this podcast is so timely, because we all believe in that. I think Abby, you nailed it. It's not changed that much, but we act like it has, because it's this big talking point. It's this big talking head right now, and that's why that we want to talk about it. But the skills everybody needs, because it's so wide right now. The swath is so wide. But what that creates is everybody being kind of the same. And so what's going to happen is, can you be creative inside here now? Can you do something nobody else is doing and differentiate yourself? Because everybody's going to have the same white page. Everybody's going to have the same marketing message, because if they're using the AI, but if you can come in and do something completely different, because they know that customer's interested in this, that's going to make them make the change. And that's what's so cool, is because I think it's wide open to us creative folks now too. And how can you do it differently? And that's what's fun. And that's what I like with my guys. Even using the CRM correctly. Like, let's get back to the basics, like making sure you're putting a follow-up in there and putting good information. And then when you learn something about the personal, actually put it in the CRM, because you're not going to remember it. And when you come back in a year and you're like, hey, how's Denise doing? Is college going all right? The sale's over at that point, right? Because they're like, wow, they actually remembered this stuff and they actually know what's going on in my life. And yeah, you're taking a little cheat sheet to help you with that. But I don't believe we're using that the right way, because we're getting so deep in other things that we're not using the tools that we should be using better still. And that's what I'm seeing in my CRM sometimes. The notes are not like in depth. They're not personal. They're not getting to know their people. It is wide, but it's not deep. And I think people need to start going much deeper in their relationships and finding out what really the customer wants. And that's how they're going to win moving forward.
One thing I would say too, the personal branding is such a great opportunity, but there's also a little bit of a trap when we all have the social media presence that we do, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook. It's very easy to run across somebody that you may be working with and alienate them too. So we live in a time where it's really easy to say how we feel about things and to express our personalities and potentially alienate potential people you want to work with. So especially if you're younger, it seems like that's a lot of people. Actually, it doesn't even matter if people that are older too, they're saying all sorts of things. I work really hard not to put controversial things on any of social media platform, whether that's Facebook, where that's my personal account and it doesn't really matter. I think it's important to be careful and remember that your digital footprint is very, very visible. And just be careful what you're putting out there. Or if you choose that you're going to put something controversial out there and you feel that passionate about that, more power to you. But understand that there may be a financial cost to that because someone else may feel differently and you might lose some traction there.
And I think that goes back to that, emotional intelligence. It's understanding how our words and actions impact others too. And I think, having a really high EQ and being able to, communicate effectively without creating some of those unintended consequences is really important. Awesome. Well, I heard emotional intelligence, authenticity, creativity. I loved Abby's point around, yes, the tools are changing, which are going to drive efficiency, but the skills are fundamentally the same. Any of those skills that are about human to human connection aren't going to go anywhere, right? I think I would completely agree with that. All right. Well, this has been another fun conversation. I love our monthly get together. Hopefully, our listeners do too. I always feel like I learned something. We are going to start next month, bringing in most of the time, anyways, sort of a sixth guest. Rotate every month to a different person, just to add some extra perspective, and that'll be, I think, fun for us too to be able to hear the thoughts of somebody else. So I look forward to talking to all of you sometime in January. Have a great holiday and Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys.